The interruption of electricity supply, the prospects of annual hikes in electricity tariffs forcing many South Africans to seek alternatives. This is The Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight we talk to Ryan Beech, who is the head of the Go-Green Parkhurst Association, a community that's seeking UDI of its own kind. It's set not only to go green, but also off the Eskom grid. With 20 houses already off the grid, some 2,000 to go, the process is gradually unfolding. The head of Go-Green Parkhurst is Ryan Beech, who joins us this evening. Ryan Beech, you guys took yourselves off the grid in terms of internet access. That gave you, I suppose, the courage to try the next grand frontier.
Correct, Bruce. We were the first neighborhood in Africa to get fiber optic internet. It was a community-driven project. And with that project, we showed ourselves that we're capable of taking on big projects and doing so successfully.
People have trouble in their own households deciding whether or not to go wireless or go for fibre or just to stick with telecom, for argument's sake. Husbands and wives fight about this, partners fight about this sort of stuff. How do you get 2,000 households in a community to reach some level of agreement without killing each other?
Well, it was actually not that difficult because we experienced a lot of problems with telecom and people got tired of the level of service delivery. So it was actually a very easy sell. You know, people just wanted a solution that works. We didn't have a solution, so yeah, it was actually not that hard at all.
The process of rolling out the broadband used Vuma Telecoms, of course, which recently got bought. A chunk of it got bought by Investec, so you've been very good for them as they have been good for you. At what point did that spark the electricity idea?
Well, you know, immediately after we saw this, that project was successful, you know, we knew that we could take on a project like this. So it happened very quickly after that.
I was chatting to Grant Patterson, he's now the chairman of an electrical supply company. He retired from Massmart at the ripe old age of 43, of course, and is now running NRG Africa, which is a subsidiary of a US-listed company. I said, you must be missing load shedding, because we haven't had load shedding for the last 2 months or so. He said, on the contrary, what actually he needs to get his business going, which is putting photovoltaic plates on the roofs of factories and of big shops and things, is higher electricity prices. Is that what's driving this initiative of yours? Is it the fear of power outages or the fear of imminent and increasing electricity prices?
No, definitely pricing, Bruce. I'm actually meeting with NRG next week. But yeah, we're expecting electricity prices in this country to shoot through the roof. The international standard for the power stations we're building is $50 billion US. They're currently projecting at $300 billion US, and all of that cost is eventually going to roll down to the end user. So we're expecting super expensive electricity in this country in the next 5 years.
Now, the technology, of course, at this stage is pretty expensive. The photovoltaic technology, the sort of technology that is required to get one off the grid. How are you guys going about it?
It's actually not that expensive anymore, and that's why we took on this project, is to make it affordable, and that's exactly what we did. A year ago, you would have paid 250,000 Rand to go off the grid. You know, we've brought that down to 120, 150,000 just by using our numbers and standing together. So we're doing everything we can to make this more affordable for everybody.
Who's doing the installation? Have you outsourced this project to single contractors?
We spoke to about 30 PV suppliers, and then we narrowed it down to 2, Tassel and Daco. So we've basically gone with 2 preferred suppliers who are doing the supply of equipment and also the installations. So it's all professionally installed by electricians and electrical engineers.
Now, Parkhurst has got the big advantage, of course, that it is yuppie central. There's a fair spread of economic demographic in Parkhurst, but by and large, it's quite a wealthy suburb. What percentage of people in Parkhurst are brought into the electricity independence?
Well, so far, actually, you know, even though it's a relatively affluent area, we found that a lot of people are still very price sensitive, and not a lot of people have 100 or 120 grand lying around. So that's now the next step that we've taken on, and we're actually currently engaging with all the banks trying to develop finance models for this technology that we hope the whole of South Africa can eventually use. But, you know, like we mentioned, about 20 houses out of 2,000 have already gone off the grid. This was always going to be a 5-year project. So so far we're very happy with the numbers and the people that have gone off the grid so far. And we think as soon as the finance options are in place, that's going to shoot through the roof drastically.
Now, how do you do this? I mean, is it all about individual plates on top of individual houses, or do you turn nearby Delta Park, which is next to it's a great big green area in the middle of Joburg, into one great big solar panel? How's this going to work?
Bruce, we looked at all types of options, and we engaged with consulting engineers, and originally wanted to do a big solar farm. But the problem with a project like that is just timing. With load shedding, people don't want to wait 2 years. And that's why we ended up going with modular solutions per household. And in the end, all these modular PV installations will tie into one microgrid. So no, we're not going to do a big solar farm. We're doing small installations per household.
Explain this to me, sorry. So each house then will have its own solar panels. It'll feed into a microgrid. What's a microgrid?
Correct. Well, a microgrid is basically a lot of smaller PV installations linked up. So we're expecting that feeding back into the grid will probably become legal within the next couple of months. All the systems we're installing, they're already been spec'd to be able to feed back into the grid. So we're already preparing for that process. So, at the moment, all the houses are still being run individually. But, if everything goes well, by next year, we'll start forming this microgrid where people actually connect with each other and share energy and feed back to each other.
I mean, the most interesting part about Larry Hagman's, the funeral notice of Larry Hagman, the old J.R. Ewing. I don't know if you're old enough, Ryan Beech, to remember J.R. Ewing from Dallas, but the most interesting part of his obituary was the bit about how in California he actually made money from selling electricity back to the state of California. Is it going to be feasible for South Africans to cover their roofs with photovoltaics and in fact do the same sort of thing? Actually, eventually have this 150,000 Rand investment offset courtesy of selling power back, in your case, to the city of Johannesburg?
I believe so. Like I mentioned earlier, we're expecting super expensive electricity. So, I'm sure that we will be able to sell back at very, very good rates and still a lot cheaper than what you would be paying Eskom.
Are the rates defined in terms of the amount of money you get per kilowatt hour?
No, well, my system I installed at home, it's costing me about R1.60 per kilowatt hour. We're currently buying from Eskom, it's about R1.30. So we're very close to that tipping point now. But yeah, there's no backfeed tariffs agreed yet or any of that. We're seeing now, I actually spoke to one of our suppliers this morning, there's a lot of new technology coming out, like the Tesla Powerwall. One of our suppliers actually is official distributor for them. And other supplier, Tassel, they're bringing out a similar product. And that's actually going to be a game changer. Your batteries last 10 years. Systems are a lot cheaper. So, it just changes.
Been one of the great restrictions. One of the great restrictions, Ryan, has it not been, is effectively people sticking banks of car batteries, or these things that look like car batteries, inside their garages, outside their garages, inside fresh air, outside of fresh air, terrified of fires that these things could cause. I've been hearing the adverts for the Tesla Powerwalls, the very elegant, they look like Swedish-designed rooftop boxes for Volvo motor cars. That's how beautiful they are. And actually, these things are due to come into the country in the first quarter of next year. Is that a game changer for us?
Definitely, I see the Tesla Powerwall as the iPhone of the renewable energy industry. It's definitely made renewable energy very sexy, but there's a lot of competition coming for it. Like I said, Tassel, they're coming out with a brilliant product. It's a lot cheaper than the Tesla Powerwall. It's more configurable. I think next year is going to be a very, very exciting year for the renewable energy space, especially in this country with the demand for it.
If you're a cheapskate like me, Ryan, and if I was a resident of Parkhurst, I might say to you, but Ryan, why don't we wait 2 years? Because expensive electricity, really expensive electricity, is 2 years away. Why do we have to spend now? Why do we need to offset that cost now? Surely the price of installation drops by 30, 40, 50% over the next 2 years, just in time for the uptick in electricity prices.
Well, you can already get the benefits out of it. I mean, I haven't had load shedding in about a year. I don't know what load shedding feels like anymore. There's currently not a lot of load shedding going around, but when winter comes, it will pop up again. So you'll already get the benefits, and you know, when the next price increase comes, then you're also going to see benefits. So there's no reason why to hold back. It's like computer technology; it's always going to be evolving. So there's no real point in waiting. You know, you just get in and get going.
I mean, the fact is, the South African energy grid is at the moment producing something like 32,000 or 32 gigawatts. Is it 32,000 gigawatts of energy a day? And we're using about 99.9% of that per day. There's very little margin for error. We only need to have another coal silo collapse, or we only need to have another bolt dropped in Coburg for something to go wrong with the national grid, for load shedding to resume once again. The system remains, even though we've had no load shedding for 2 months, very vulnerable.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we've got no reserves, you know, and that's very concerning. So, you know, we're really trying to encourage people to go off the grid, not just to help themselves, but to help the country. You know, it's damaging our economy. You know, we need to help out where we can.
We've seen the rollout of fiber optics. You guys inspired that revolution. Are you having other areas come to consult you to say, the kings of fiber optic who've led to the spread across your neighbours in Parktown North and Saxonwold and other posh parts of Joburg, are those guys coming and knocking on your door now and saying, how can we do this for energy independence for our suburbs as well?
Yes, definitely. I actually chatted to a resident from Rijmsig Country Estate this morning, Philip Neeser. They've been following our process, and they're also very far down the line. They're also currently looking at finance models for their residents. I've been contacted by Greenside, about 10 other neighbourhoods. So, you know, as a Vuma, I think by the end of 2016, they're aiming to be in 40 or 50 neighbourhoods, and all of that's happened in 2 years. So we're very much expecting a similar thing to happen with this, you know, in two years, to see at least 40 or 50 suburbs either off the grid or in the process of going off the grid.
Ryan Beech, I really wish you luck with it. Thank you very much for chatting to us this evening on The Moneymakers, the head of Go-Green Parkhurst, and it is the biggest threat that Eskom in fact faces because of the failure of Eskom to complete its power stations on time. Citizens are taking not the law into their own hands, but certainly they're taking their energy future into their own hands. And you know what? It might just pay for itself as well. There'll be more savvy ways of keeping money in your pocket and not passing it over to Eskom and other utilities that don't do their jobs next time on The Moneymakers. For now, it's good night.